Welcome to the You Need More Money podcast. I'm your host, Matt Manero, where I come to you from my studio in Dallas, Texas, each and every week. One of my favorite quotes is the greatest gift you can give to your children is the people that you bring home for dinner. That's how I look at this podcast. How can I bring interesting people who have done interesting stuff that my audience can learn from and that I can learn from too? Today, I have one of those people. I've got Casey Kelly on the show today. Casey, welcome to the You Need More Money podcast.
Hey, Matt, I'm excited to be here, man. I was looking forward to this for like 3 weeks straight. I was like, yeah.
That's awesome. I can't wait to have you and get into it because listen, like we were just talking in the preview, the thing that you and I have in common is that we have both lived the plight of small business owners, the absolute despair and pain that so many millions and millions of businesses feel. And then somehow through those trials and tribulations, we ended up on the other side. Now, I'm still running my company after 23 years, and you just had a nice exit, and I want to get into all of that. But the only way it all makes sense is for us to go back to some of the early days. Was entrepreneurial spirit always on Casey's mind?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that question. I'm a storyteller, so if ever I go long-winded or real fast, forgive me. It's my passion just boiling over. That's the rocketprenuer in me, right? And so early on as a kid, I was a hustler. I grew up in a home with parents that, although good-mannered and good-willed, and their objective was to raise me well, they were drug addicts, right? And so they would use and abuse drugs and alcohol. Mostly my father. My mom got caught up in it because of my dad. He was leading her. And so because of that, I learned very early on how to lie. I'll be honest, how to lie, how to manipulate, how to get out of things. Because as a drug addict, you have to, right? That you have to constantly be protecting yourself so you can get your high, especially when people find out. And so it was more caught, not taught. I learned early on. I myself never, by God's grace, struggled with alcohol or drugs or those things because I was so mad at them in some ways. Like, I don't want to be like you. But as a young kid, I understood the dynamics of how to manipulate people. Right. And so as a young kid, I started saying, well, wait, I mean, how do you make money? Well, the Bible says ruthless men get rich. Right. And so there's this logic of like, well, if I'm just this guy who does whatever it takes, I'll end up with money. But I didn't have any morals or values because of kind of my childhood. And so the answer to your question is I grew up learning how to hustle and grind. And so every single time I'd see an obstacle, I would think, I can overcome that, right? I could beat that because I'm a hustler. Nothing's going to stop me.
When do you remember, when's your first memory, Casey, of when I like to say, you know, as it happens so often with our parents, sooner or later we realize that, you know, Superman doesn't have a cape. So when did you see that? When did you see that as a kid?
What's interesting is I think it wasn't until I was about like 13. So I was about 13 years old. I had a younger brother, 2 years younger than me. And so I'm kind of leading him. And at about 13, my mom had decided to go on the road. She was a traveling saleswoman, getting paid a couple $100,000 a year.
Oh, wow. No kidding.
So she dropped out of high school in 9th grade or junior high in 9th grade, finished her GED, and then got a job as an executive sales representative over 20 years for United Healthcare. And so hustle and grind. So part of what I learned, you know, even Superwoman or, you know, Wonder Woman, watching her economically, was that if you had grit, you could get anything done, right? She would overcome all the obstacles without being educated. And so I saw that power emulated. But where I saw the cape kind of come off, let's say, was with my father, right? Because I think as men, we look to our fathers for our father figure in many ways. And we try and figure out, like, well, who am I supposed to be? I'm a man. What does that look like? And I'm not trying to be stereotypical, but that's how it usually works. And so with my dad, he was a trucker and he decided to just stop working, right? One day he's like, nah, mom will pay the bills. And so he decided to stay home and get high every day and begin sleeping with my mom's girlfriends, right? Wow. And I'm honest and real. I'll always take it I'll tell you like it is, because life is short and I'd rather just be honest. Let's just get real with life, you know? And so my dad, I saw in that moment, like the fall of a man.
Yeah.
Let's say.
You saw that Superman doesn't wear a cape.
That's it. You know, and I saw my dad, and I see Wonder Woman out there still fighting the good fight. And she did in many ways. And so when she came home, she told me this story years later, and I didn't remember that. We recently talked about it, kind of processing emotions. Right. And she said, you know, when I came home from that travel and that trip, I actually found that he was sleeping with my friends, and we called that out, and we had to work with, they stayed together another 10 years. I bless my mom. I love her for that. But she said, we worked through it, but you kids were literally eating food out of the bottom drawer when I walked in, filthy, dirty, hadn't showered in like a week or taken a bath in like a week. And your dad was so high on heroin on the couch with my friend, laying on the couch, that you guys were literally taking care of yourselves. And so I remember being like this 13-year-old kid, 12, 13, eating literal food that dad put on the bottom shelf, you know, but I didn't recall that as a pinnacle moment. But I feel like looking back now, I'm like, yeah, that was when I realized, like, I don't want it to be like that. You know, like there has to be something more. And if there's not, then what's the point?
So,
right?
So in this sort of two lives, right? The home life. And by the way, you know, we both know a lot of the same people, like we were talking about at Two Market and in Bill Woodich. Yeah. You know, there is this dichotomy amongst all of it. Hank has the same situation. Woodich has the same situation. I have the same situation. And now you're telling us where there really are these two different personalities, right? There's this protective personality that lives outside the home. And then there's this sort of defensive, just sort of what is about to happen when I walk home today kid that so many people don't experience. Yeah. But that's why I'm so blessed when I talk to people who have experienced it, because I can relate like it was freaking yesterday for me. Amen. What is this moment about to bring when I open this door? And that is just, it's vicious for a young kid to have to develop that thought process. Some people develop it with retraction or retreatism. They run to their room. Or some people develop, like for me, which was incredible anger and just hate, right? Yeah. So go ahead. I get half emotional even talking about it, because I think it's such a raw deal for a kid, a parent that has that power to squander it for a kid to have to deal with.
And I think, so when I look back to, because I've asked these questions, why, like you just said, Matt, I get so angry, right? Why am I so passionate? I'm like, well, my dad used to punch holes in the wall when he was mad. You know, he never abused my mom, thank God, or us, but he had such an anger. And it was because he had felt like such a failure. I could see that, like that he wasn't living up to his fullest potential in those different moments. And so he would turn to drugs to resolve those emotions, right? To numb the pain. And even today, as I talk to my mom, I'm like, why did you guys do that? Because he passed away from a heroin overdose about 2 years ago. So
wow. So he never stopped.
Never stopped. My dad continued until the day he died in Portland, Oregon, in Tent City, like on the streets, literally overdosed he had a brain aneurysm and ended up in the hospital, went and saw him. It was so bad. He was having strokes and he became immobile. I mean, he was just twitching. And it was unfortunate, because I can say it half-heartedly, but that is and will continue to be a real grief, watching that man that had become a shell, because he was 6'3" and 300 pounds. I mean, he was a large man. It wasn't as if he's just a small little guy. He was always Superman, this warrior that you look to, and to watch him laying that bed, sick, purple, dying, that's heavy. But I do look back. So to that point, when you talk about like what not to know, and it's so hard for kids to go through that, I genuinely believe that's what made me as gritty as I am.
Totally.
Like this, all the chaos, when someone comes to me and they're like, oh, this sucks. I'm like, bro, it's not as bad as blank or whatever it may be. And so
Woodich has an incredible story on that, Casey. I don't know if he told you about it, but his story, I mean, if you get a chance and somebody can go back and listen to my podcast with Bill Woodich, which is, it's an unbelievable, powerful story of how he had to deal with it. But that your point is so important. And I want to get to where your point takes guys like me and you, because there is this burning, right, that creates this shrapnel. I just look at it as smoke behind me, right? But then eventually the great ones have this transformation that you had and I had, and the great ones have it. There's this movement, this meta thing that happens where we end up getting right with all that stuff. But along the way for you, things happen because Well, let's just go there. You tell the story. What happens when you're 18? You're finishing high school. What's going on in your mind?
Yeah, so I dropped out of high school in my senior year. I was sophomore, junior class president. Because I didn't want to be home, right? So you can imagine, because of the home,
you're like at all the events. You're like,
I was sophomore class president. I was head of baseball, head of football, acting, all of it. I was
just
living.
Don't let me go home,
dude. I didn't want to go home, right? And so I ended up living at school and getting every accolade. Wow. And because I was gritty, I'd always win the awards, or I'd be the head of the plays. I was in Peter Pan, Wizard of Oz. I was the lion, right? Anyways, I'll just tell you, put them up.
You were winning though, but you were learning to win though. You were learning to win.
And outside of the, let's call it the nurture, right? So it's like, well, what's the nature versus this nurture? Are you forced to live within the confines of where you were raised? No, I've never believed that. Still don't. I believe that anyone and everything can change. Always. We can change something. It starts with our mind, then our heart fuels it, but everyone can change. I believe that. And so when people say no one ever changes, I'm like, not true. They just don't follow the how to get right. But I'm 17. I drop out of high school, even though I had 4.0 grades, and I was actually on my way to Harvard. That was my objective. I had applied. I was on that trail, and I was heading to be more than my family was. That was always my vision, that fire in me. But my mom, when my parents split at 17, she said, I need you to come home and take care of me, right, financially. And so I faced this crossroads. So we talk about like this hard life, having to make decisions. Am I going to pursue Harvard and my vision and these dreams, or am I going to go home and take care of mom and help provide? Because I had a little brother who needed me to be kind of dad and step in. And so I took the latter route. I quit school, graduated early, about 7 months before my class, finished all the packets because we were done. It was fluff anyways by the end. And so graduated, and I started going to work. And so I learned, so when we talk about like the story, I started going to a job at 17 years old at Discover Card, and I started learning about finance, right? Balance transfers, credit cards, retention, customer service. Like I got so inundated. Selling. I was selling balance transfers from other credit cards. Yep. And so sales is my strength, as you can tell. At 17, I had a couple tattoos already because I was a musician. And so I was like, my ultimate life dream, if I wasn't going to Harvard, was to be a rock star, right? I was going to play rock and roll and be famous.
What was the instrument? Guitar?
Guitar. So I play guitar. That's a Taylor I got over there. So a guitar, and then I sang. So I'm a singer. I'm a vocalist and frontman. And so that was my vision. So I had these two plans. Well, if I go to school, awesome. Or if I'm a rock star, either one will work out. Don't care. I'm just heading that way. And so when I left school, I started focusing way more on the music with the idea of trying to just provide financially for mom while working on the music career, right? Because I'm like, well, I got tattoos on my wrists at this point. It's hard to get a job unless you're in the bullpen, as Bill and I spoke about. Yeah. He's like, you're in the bullpen. Now what? I'm like, you know that all too well with your call center, don't you, man? And so I'm in this call center at Discover Card, learning finance, learning the economics of finance. And I didn't know it at the time. I mean, I'm 17, so I wasn't really learning. I was kind of like, oh, what's this? I'm like a weed. I was growing really quickly, and I was like, wait a minute. If I could get a credit card, then I could start using debt to grow my ventures or ideas and crazy ideas. And so this entered this world without, call it no business acumen, just grit and opportunity, that hustle. And so as I entered Discover Card, and again, there's a million stories between 17 and 29, right, that can live. But I started learning how to work hard for somebody and get really fast to the top. But then I'd start to feel this throttling that for me personally, where I'd reached a ceiling, mostly because of how I looked with the tattoos or some of those things in Utah, right? Utah's a fairly religious state, no problem with that, but they're anti-tattoos with the predominant religion. Yeah. And so here I am looking like a punk kid selling, I'm #1 in sales out of 2,000 phone reps. And they're like, yeah, we just can't promote you. Just keep selling stuff. Right. And I'm like, that's weird. That's like going into the military and only getting to defuse bombs because you got a wrist tattoo, man. Like, which is okay. It's just, those are the limitations.
Dude, let's just be straight about that, man. I'm interviewing for a VP of sales right now, and I have a major, super fancy headhunter in New York finding these candidates, and he's bringing me these just pedigreed resumes, right? I mean, these guys are like, they're unbelievable. I mean, listen, we're a junkyard dog company, man. I mean, I'm a junkyard dog. My top guys are junkyard dogs. I mean, we are just scrappers. We are alley cat fighters in this office, and it's our culture. But these guys are coming in, I'm talking to them, and within 2 seconds on the phone, I say to myself, oh boy, I got to go into sales mode. These guys are dead. And what I mean by that is large companies destroy passion. They destroy ambition. They destroy entrepreneurship. And everyone thinks entrepreneurship has to occur outside of a business. Dude, this intrapreneurship is what people really need to think about, because the number 2 person at Facebook is still worth $1 billion and nobody's ever heard of their ass. And so you don't have to be the boss to be an entrepreneur.
You don't have to have all the risk. So what you just said is you don't have to take all the risk to still have the upside.
Totally.
And that plays as we talk more into kind of my story with the exit, right, in my business. So I'm the 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid. I'm a musician, so I want to speak to that. And because I decide every time I get to the top at Discover Card, I moved over from Discover to Bank of America to Verizon. I job hopped many jobs because I was really good at making money, but I cared more about the accolades. I cared more about the affirmation than I did the money. I mean, by the time I was 18, I was making $100,000 a year, because I was so good at that. But I was kind of like in the book Millionaire Next Door, I was a high producer, but I had no idea how to keep it. Right? I was spending every dime because I was young.
That's stupid money for an 18-year-old kid.
It's too much, it really without a firm family foundation or training and mentorship, I had no idea. And so I'm making money. I don't get satisfied by money. I'm just like the dead presidents on trees. I don't care anymore. Like it's whatever, spend it. But I know how important it is to live this life. And so long story short, I started creating in my music world, using the money, taking care of mom, but then also using the money to fuel my music career. I started treating it like a business. So my first entrepreneurial real venture was as a front man of a band, trying to get on a record label, get on tour, record the records. I mean, create your product, your service, your offering.
Hey, give me the time frame so I can get an idea what the genre, who you were competing against in the music business.
Yeah, so I was 19 years old. It's probably 10 years ago. So 2008.
Well, dude, that was Britney land, man. Dude, you were fighting against Britney, man. That's what you were.
Well, stylistically, me and Britney are quite different.
But what is the type of music, though? What is
So back then, and I have it on my website, and I've got a record I'm doing right now that I will be launched in the next couple months, and people can listen. The Rocketprenuer.com. It's spelled weird. I'll tell you later how it's spelled, but Rocketprenuer.com. But I was in the post-hardcore screamo scene. So I actually screamed and sang in a band. So me and Britney would probably have been on different tours, right? But I moved from there more into pop. So later on, I did. So later on, me and Britney wouldn't be that far apart.
No
right?
joke.
So I started writing pop tracks and electronic, and I would sing it.
I mean, you have a little bit of that Adam Levine look to you, a little bit like that.
I get that. I did. Well, as I lose more weight. So I was 276 pounds.
No way.
Yeah, man. And 276 last year. I've lost 45 pounds in a year, walking 5 to 10 miles a day.
Wow. So you're still a big dude. So how tall are you?
I'm 6'1". So I'm about 230, 220, 228 was the last weigh in. I threw the scale away because I want to feel good. And so,
dude, you're something else, this guy, Billy,
I'm
right? I mean, this guy is a piece of work, man. All right. So let's get to it. Let's get to the business piece so we can talk about, let's get to the business piece. Somehow you find your way into the iPhone repair business. And it starts with you going into a shop. And you say to the guy, hey, I'd like what you're doing here. Let me open up a franchise. And the guy says, I don't do that. Just go open your own shop. And you're like, okay, I offered it to you.
Dude, you hit it right on the head. That's the story. The pre-story to that a little bit. I job hopped a lot while trying to become a rock star. I did get to the point where I almost was famous on tour with all those things, thousands of kids at shows. I actually became a Christian, and that's important for a big point in my life, because when I was 19, so on this road trying to be famous, I met a man who shared the gospel with me. My life was rocked. I became a Christian. I lost all my music, everything. My whole life imploded there. And so that was a turning point where I had to start figuring it out, how I was going to really make money legitimately and do what's right, not just being a rock star in our plan. But to this point of when I started my company, so I had been married a year at this point. So I met my lovely wife. We got married. I was super excited. And I met this job. And so I'm just trying to learn how to not be so entrepreneurial outside of the ecosystem, but I'm so gritty and passionate that I didn't really know how to work with others. I just didn't. I'll be honest. I was like 22 years old, and I had piss and vinegar, and guys loved that for sales. Like you said, the junkyard dog barking, let's go to war. But I wasn't good yet at understanding why others mattered. I was like, it's all about me. Just get out of the way. I'm the tyrant and I'll get it done. And so I actually went to my boss at a job. I've been there for a year, and I just told him straight up, you don't know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah,
like,
right.
I was like, you don't know what you're doing. And he was like, what do you mean? And I was right, but I was wrong, right? You know, like, although I was right, he was like, well, unfortunately, I'm the boss. Walk the hell out that door. Goodbye. So I get fired from my job. And so the pre-story to that was I was fired and couldn't get a job for 4 months. And so while I'm looking for a job, like just going, I got to work somewhere, I got to provide, we find out my wife is pregnant. And so the baby syndrome, as they kind of refer to it, kicks in. And I'm like, oh God, I got to provide. How am I going to make money? It's not going to be enough. I can't just go work a job. I can't make 50 grand a year, 70. It's not going to be enough. Like, and I had unrealistic expectations on the cost of a baby. Okay. I thought there were millions a year. They're not. but I was like, I need money. I need more money. Right. This concept. And so I feel this burden. And so, yes, I meet a guy, I walk into his iPhone repair shop. He's doing $15,000 a month in top line cash sales, but he's taking it all out. Like, he's buying cars. I walked up and he had like a Maserati out front. And I was like, what the heck? Was this phone repair shop? Like, what's this guy doing? And he tells me, dude, like, it's a new industry. This is 2011. So just to back you up a little bit, about 7 years ago, October 2011, this kid is just killing it. I'm like, dude, I would love to get involved. I am a hacker. I get computers. I'm a millennial. I'm iPhone savvy. The iPhone's new, but I'm real familiar with how to jailbreak it. Like, what if I were to kind of step into this business with you? Because shiz, I got nothing else. Let's just be real, right? So I'm like, I got nothing else. I applied to over 100 jobs, just like you were saying, you're interviewing. I had 40 interviews, and each time they'd say, you're amazing. You don't fit our culture. Yeah. And it was like this, damn it. I'll be real. Where do I fit then? Like, where am I supposed to fit? And I, as a man of faith, I believe God was kind of like, I got a plan. It's okay, Casey. Just wait, be still and know that I'm God. I was very comfortable in that verse, but also afraid. And so I meet this kid. I say to him, oh my gosh, I would love to open another store, right? I don't want to work in your store because that won't work out, but I'd love to open another one. And I was so foolish and greedy. I was like, I'll give you 25% of my gross sales. Like, I didn't even know what I was talking about. Yeah. I just knew I needed to do it. I felt compelled to do it. And he was like, he literally said to me, nah, man, do your own thing. I'll give you a couple resources. This is crazy to me. He's like, I'm getting out of the business because I'm going to make more money as a security sales guy during the summer sales than I'll make here fixing phones. So it's okay. Maybe that was true, but he decided to leave. And so within 14 days, because I'm a rocket, I opened my first shop with no idea how to even do the business. Yeah. The first iPhone I fixed was the first iPhone I had ever seen open. Like, the phone comes in, they're like, can we fix this iPhone? It was an iPhone 3GS, right? Dated. The guy pushes it across the counter. He's like, how much is it to fix? I'm like, $100. He goes, okay, how long? I'm like, 3 days. And I just, because I didn't have any, I just had a store, man. I never painted walls or built them in my life. And I put up a hole in the wall, signed a lease for $700 a month, 600 square foot. And I'm like, I just got to do it. I feel compelled to just do this at all costs. I'll figure it out. Cause that's how I'm the guy who falls off the cliff and builds a plane on the way down. I've always been that way. Figure it out. So punchline. First iPhone I ever fixed, we broke. I had to buy him a brand new one. I learned the hard way of not having processes, systems, having the know-how will hurt you. And you either have to sharpen the axe or wield it harder. And I was real good at swinging it real hard, but I started learning, wait, you're being a fool. There's not wisdom here in just running aimlessly, Casey. Like, you can't do this. And so long and short is we started to cultivate processes. I'm like, well, how do all other businesses look? So I started looking to other retail businesses. I'd go into Starbucks, I'd go into Subway, and I would just watch the flow. There's a manager. That seems to be a technician, right? That fits my world. Oh, wait, there's the entrepreneur. There's the manager type guy who's intrapreneur, right? Like you're saying, he's the district. He just showed up to hold accountable. But you don't need that till you have enough traffic. So wait, how do you get the leads? And so this whole cycle of what I now kind of call these 7 pillars of business that I've got as kind of a course that we're launching with Hank and team the next couple of weeks. It became the 7 pillars of business that I had to master if I was going to survive, right? And those are people, processes, systems, network, know-how, resources, and agreements. You're like, that's awesome, Casey. What does that all mean? Well, punchline, there are a lot of shiz you need to know if you're going to be successful in business long-term.
Well, it depends. I mean, if you want to scale a business and replicate a business, there's all of that sort of stuff. So you get that stuff down. Obviously, you had no idea it was the 7 pillars, but you're just saying, I need some systems, I need some organization. And then you start to open up other stores.
Yeah. So I grew from 1 store to 7 in 15 months.
In 15 months.
15 months. And here's why. Because our first month, I told you that guy was doing 15K a month, right? Or so in top line sales. And he'd been around a couple of years. Our first month, we did 15K. Right. So I was like, dude, we're murdering this guy. And then the second month we were at 30. And then the next month we were at 35. And so now I have cash flow.
Yeah.
But cash flow covers bleed when you're a fool and you don't know it. And so I'm just spending and making, and we're moving quickly. And so I thought, we'll just take what's left over in the bank account, open another one, open another one, open another one. And so we didn't struggle with opening. It was sustaining it. Right. Building the process.
And why was that? Because we had product that had to be bought. We had startup costs. We had renovations that had to be done. We had marketing costs. We had hiring costs. We had base salaries. We had all of that stuff that was burning through cash flow. Is that the reason that it was struggle for you?
I was able to do all that with the cash flows. The good news, I could cover all that. Where it went wrong is I did not truly know the model for how long it took for a store in regards to lead generation, how long it was actually going to take to get enough bodies in the door to fix the iPhone or fix these tablets or other products. And we had yet to diversify product mixes or learn how to draw people into the door for retail at that time. Good news is there was nobody really fixing phones. And so they just kind of showed up. But then competition enters, right? Sure. So then suddenly we're like, oh, wait, pricing is important. Product's important. And so back to those like learning as you go. And again, to your point, on the other side, I knew none of that and we still were okay because we just did whatever it took, right? We just were gritty.
So we get to 12 stores total, right?
Yep.
And then what makes you say it's time for me to get out? Because why not go to 24? Why not go to 36?
So I had grown those 7 stores in 15 months. I'll truncate the entire story over many years. But what ended up happening is we had overgrown, like I told you. I started losing 40 grand a month and I almost went bankrupt. And so I almost had to kill my entire company because I had overgrown at speed without having enough capital for some of the lead gen, right?
So let's just stay with it because I really want the audience to understand this, that you were taking from the successful store to fund the unsuccessful store. And then the burn rate until the revenue gen stabilized to profitability is what began to really tip you because of the speed of the growth.
Correct. Because some stores grew faster, others didn't. And all of it came down to people, my people inside and the customers coming in the door, right? That's why the 7 pillars for me, the first one is people. It's like, boom, people are most important. And so back to your question there, we're at these 7 stores. I had to close from 7 to 3.
Really?
I did. So the
story, wild ride, man.
It's a wild ride, man. And you were talking about the real raw grittiness of someone trying to survive in the trenches, right? And so for me, I don't want it to sound beautiful and glamorous. Like suddenly we jumped to 12 stores and life was good and I got paid. Right? That is not what happened. During my year 2.5, I'm going from 7 to 3 stores. I was losing 30 grand a month. So you're like, that's smart. But I had to fire 20 of my friends.
For sure.
These people are my friends at this point, right?
Stay with me. Casey, I hate to interrupt, but you kind of gave me permission to interrupt you.
I did. You interrupt me. Go.
But I need to discuss the faith component of this because at this time you had considered you had been saved.
Yeah.
You have considered yourself a full-blown Christian, giving your life over to God.
Yep.
But yet you're closing stores. You're firing friends or people, but yet you're also at some point generating cash. I mean, this must also have been a very conflicting period of time for you, or did you have clarity?
No, not at all. The money and faith often is seen as a war. And part of my mission operandi is to tell people God made money and it's not evil. It's a tool. It's a root of evil. It's not the only root and it can become a root. But to this point, I had to go to God, no question. And so that's a pinnacle piece of this story back to 12, which is, I'm glad you bring it up, is that I am a Christian and I'm firing my church friends who work for me. Right. And then I see them at church and they're like, oh, hey, how's it going? I saw you still have your Cadillac you didn't get rid of, right? Or to that effect. And my heart's like, you're right, dude. I feel horrible. Like I didn't want to get here. I was a fool. And so I'm eating crow in humility. And the Bible says humility comes before honor, right? And I knew that, but doesn't mean it feels good. And so I'm in faith saying I've got to change and I've got to do this. And so what I did is I submitted before God, I'm going to go from 7 to 3 and I need you to help me sustain these 3 or kill them. That was my heart. It was like, make me bankrupt and just kill it dead because clearly I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like, or help me figure out what to do. And so in about a year's time, those stores went from 30 or so grand in revenue, those 3 remaining, to about 100 per store. So I literally started doing 100 grand a month per store by focusing on the 3 and going deep, not just wide.
Dude, that's a lot of repairs, man.
It was a lot. It was, well, I had the magic sauce. I learned how to take our average ticket from 100 to 190 by attaching protections and service plans.
Yeah.
And no one in the industry, even till today, it's part of how we've scaled and had secret sauce and got acquired, had figured out that model. But to your point, I mean, we did 350,000 repairs since starting. I mean, it was crazy volume of fixing phones, and it became fixing phones, saving souls, right? The inside and outside, where I'm helping employees who had bad backgrounds, and because I didn't have a culture I could be safe in, so I created a culture where that kid who stole some stuff once shouldn't have done it. He repented and had accountability, and so it became a mission more than it was just like a business. At times, back to that faith point, it would hurt us because I'd care more. I'd be like, "You're forgiven, even though you stole $100,000." How do I reconcile money? Right?
How do you? I think it's a really important question. How do you?
Here's the truth. I always put people first over money, and I do, right? And so I was really excited to meet with you because I have yet to read your book. You need more money, and I'm like, I think you need to love God and love people, and money will come, right?
So I will be very frank about that. I mean, I am ridiculously, and some people might call conflicted. I'm not conflicted with it. I have a very specific view of the individual's requirement when it comes to money. And I am not interested in helping other people. I'm interested in securing my own future for my wife and my 3 boys. Along the way, I've helped many other people in my office do extremely well. I've helped tens of thousands of customers go from 1 truck to 100 trucks. And it's been an amazing ride. But I believe there is an element of unbridled ambition and selfishness that is required before we can turn our lives into the assistance of others. Zig Ziglar always says, if you help enough people, used to say before he passed, if you help enough people get what they want, they'll eventually help you get what you want. And I disagree with that. I think you got to help you get what you want and secure that down before you can even begin to help other people's. And that's where my opinion diverges a lot of conversations, and it's controversial for so many people, right? Everyone thinks they should be helping other people, and my stance is help your ass first, and then you can take care of somebody else.
So here's an interesting dynamic. I actually don't disagree with what you said. I genuinely believe if you have no pantry and it has nothing in it, you can't help other people, right? Yeah. But part of life, there's an interesting dynamic because every 60 seconds, 105 people die. And so if that's true, and 205 are born, so I get that, right? But if every 60 seconds, 105 people are dying, that means tomorrow, Matt, you and I could just die. Okay. Sure. And so that's okay. So we could die in our relentless pursuit for more, right? The Bible says, and I'm that guy, Bible says that the relentless pursuit of money is not an evil thing, but it does say that our eyes always want more. And I'm that guy. You know, I love Grant Cardone, but every day the guy tells me 10X because he's got 100 million and he needs another 100. I'm like, I get it. I do. But I'll tell you, with $5 million, you're set if you live right forever. Right? Like your kids are set. Your kids are set.
Dude, that's the number I say, and you need more money too, because I try to give real numbers. 5 million is the number that I say that everybody should. That is the number where we can really begin to live in this incredible fullness without any more worries of the money.
And you hit that because they say, oh, well, you make $75,000 a year. You don't get happy above that. I'm like, well, you need 5. So you, to your point, can feel completely secure for your family, your future, their future. I've got 4 kids. I get it. I mean, you believe like 4 kids and all that chaos. Yep. That's part of the interweaving of chaos. Yes, but I know the economics of needing to make money to provide. Now, I will also agree there in Christendom, there is an idea that if you make money, it's evil. Like most pastors are not paid well unless they're mega pastors or certain things like that. And honestly, I don't agree with most of those. Just to be real, I'd be happy to talk to Joel and all the other guys. I'd love to sit down. Right? But I'm saying we have different views on the use of money. But the Bible says that there's 1,000 cattle on 1,000 hills and they belong to God. And the punchline of that is saying, hey, money is made by God. It's good. And so for me, that's why faith truly is so foundational, because I go, look, I have made a shiz ton of money and watched it all fly away, like Proverbs says, overnight by one simple change. And in those moments, it's like, what do I cling to? Because if I were to die tomorrow and my I've lost 250 grand in a night, right? If $250,000 was gone tomorrow, would someone's life be rocked to the core? Or do they turn to faith and say, you know, it's all right, God. What comes and goes, it goes. It's yours. It's okay. I have faith and believe that. Now, again, I don't disagree with you that we need to be people who are out front. My greatest discomfort comes when we say we must step on others for the sake of ourselves. Because to be honest, that's like Adam Grant's give and take, man. Givers are always on top. Well,
let me ask you this, man. I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember exactly where I was in my house. It was just me and my mom. My real dad left when I was 6 months old. I never saw him again.
Wow.
And I remember asking my mother, I must have been 7, does God know what my future looks like? Mm-hmm. And my mother said, absolutely. And from that moment on, I never worried about it again. Mm-hmm. So it's a weird dichotomy in which I believe we have a requirement to accumulate. Mm-hmm. And yet I also know that whatever the journey I'm on is predestined.
For sure.
This is whatever I'm doing is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I knew that since I was about 7 years old. So when you say that you jump off the cliff and you're building the plane on the way down, I never worried about it either. I just knew I had to stay in the game. I never worried about, was I going to, be wherever I was supposed to be. I knew it was going to be all right.
Well, and I appreciate that, because I think that is faith in action. That's what Bible tells us to be. Like without faith, it's impossible to please God. Hebrews 11:6. And so when we look at that, it's like, well, without that faith and that utter belief, it's impossible. But then we have to examine, I believe, if we say God is real, right? So if you don't believe in God, okay, I can't hold you accountable to the basis. But if you say, hey, I believe there's something more and I want to know more, I say, well, okay, let's define what the Bible or what God said, right? And so when I look at money, say scripturally, money is a tool. It's a resource. In fact, we're called, to your point, to be stewards of that money. Yeah. The whole entire parable of talents, they get rebuked for not investing, for not being a good steward. Yeah. And so for me, I'm like, I don't read that and say like, well, money's bad. I read it and I say, he who was given little will be expected to take care of little, but then when he's given much will be required of him, right? And so today, even as I read a little bit about you, Little Business Intelligence, like you've amassed wealth, you've made money, you're grinding and gritting, you've done things that no one's ever done, like Bill in many ways. And I'm on that path. I'm young, I'm hungry, I'm like my country, like they say in Hamilton, like I'm scrappy and hungry, right? Like that, I'm on my way to where I need to go. But on the inverse side, to your point, I think there comes a point where if our life is only about the accumulation of things, we will find ourselves unhappy. Yeah. But I do agree that there's no way you can help radically change others if you yourself are not the standard of morality, right? Yeah. And
that's easy. That's powerful. Look, I start many of my speeches on the book where I say to the audience, you will never convince me ever. I don't care what your argument is. You will never convince me that money doesn't matter. Because when I saw my brother-in-law diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. He left a wife and 4 kids, no health insurance, no life insurance, and $100. And the only thing that made that attempt at recovery better was my money, removing that guilt. You'll never tell me that money doesn't matter, ever. Because I had the greatest gift ever. Every ounce of my hard work was worth it when I was able to write those checks for that 1 year in an effort to try to get him better.
And see, and that's powerful. The interesting thing is for me personally, and we're going deep right now, this is not just surface level. The truth is I think that's why worldview matters, right? What we see from our worldview. And what I mean is I truly believe personally, there's only really 2 worldviews. There's a biblical worldview or an unbiblical. That's my belief. That's okay. You can't convince me otherwise either. Right? And so there's these 2 worldviews. And so if there's a biblical worldview, well, what does every chapter say? What did God say? What does that mean? Because for me, this world is the test. That's the rest, right? Like eternity is what I fight to live for. The Bible says that my home is in heaven. I don't belong here. This isn't really my place. It happens to be the place I'm here to find God. It's time to go home. but I must remain in the body. So again, as a Christian, so it's like, oh, that's familiar. I'm in Texas. I get what you're saying. But I'm saying if that's the scope of my worldview, well, I'm going to act accordingly, right? I'm going to invest in eternity. If your worldview is not, let's say, hyper biblical, like if you're not looking through that lens, then yes, you don't have a guide. So you're like, well, yeah, it makes lots of sense to live for today in this world and influence this world. Because, for example, and again, I don't want to be insensitive, so hear my heart. Like your brother, right? Or was it
brother-in-law?
Brother-in-law. Your brother-in-law who passed, the comfort I would have is, praise God, you used your worldly wealth to earn friends in heaven. And by God's grace, you're going to go see that guy in heaven.
Dude, one thing I know for sure about my brother-in-law, he was ready to meet his keeper.
Amen. And so for me, I go, well, if that's truth, then there's hope, right? So then for me, you're totally right in saying you used worldly wealth, dead presidents on trees to invest into eternity. So again, I sit there and go, Matt, I would be saying amen. But to your point, if you wouldn't have had it, like Joseph of Arimathea, who bought Jesus's tomb, right? If you wouldn't have had the money, then it wouldn't have been there. And so for me, my objective goal is for the millennial Christian, or the Christian, let's just say in general, forget the millennial for a sec. I just happen to resonate. But for the Christian, it's okay to make money and to need money in such a way. And as you say, as a requirement, it is my fiduciary duty to my God to be a good steward of what he gives me. But when things go bad, like I just said, overnight, you lose 250 grand. We don't blame God because we didn't do what was right. We have to go, like you said, it's going to work out. My path's determined, and I have to do the next right thing, which includes making more money. I respect that, actually. And so that's my thoughts on it.
Well, it is deep and it's great. And it is a choice that people have to make. I mean, I do love your clarity that says it's either this or it's this. Yeah. And the problem may be, and I don't know if it's judgment or not, is that someone who says it's this, but they're doing this.
And that's the contradictory, and that's the problem. And so that's why, to be real, the Bible is very clear. We shouldn't judge an unbeliever, if you will. So it's like, if I'm a Christian, I shouldn't be looking at an atheist saying like, why don't you live my standards? Like that's not the stand. That is that predestination type concept, right?
But look, I'm in the credit business. Do you know who the worst payers in the credit business are?
Christians, probably.
Pastors. They never pony up. You know why? Because when we finance their shuttle bus for the kids to go to the Baptist camp in the summertime, they don't want to. They know we ain't going to be on the news saying that we repoed the bus.
Give me their phone number. I'd be happy to call them and call him out.
Hey, man, you got to pay Matt Manero because he's telling you Jesus didn't look good.
The second worst are lawyers because they know how to game the system, right?
That's the and those are the views, right? And so part of your question, then, and just as the audience, listening, and again, I know I can get us way the H off track. That's my life. It's a hurricane, but. Part of the story is like I got to 12 stores, okay, and I get here and it's all grit and it's hard work, lots of losses. I'm $1.4 million in debt. I'm just being real. Like I got $1.25 million in debt because of the growth. When we grew 9 stores in about a year, because back to the faith point, I went before God with my 3 and I said, I'm making a bunch of money. I got a lot of cash flow coming in. I could grow a store every couple months, right? Or we had enough cash coming in. But I took a deep breath and I said, I feel like I'm called to get to 12 stores before the end of the year. This was a faith element. Why 12? I was in Alaska Airlines in Shenzhen, China, finishing a deal. And I prayed. No one speaks English. And I believe before the Lord. And I'm charismatic with a seatbelt. So forgive me if it sounds a little crazy, right? But I'm pretty excited about my God. And I believe he can do anything. But I said to God, God, what am I supposed to do? I'm making money. I got 3 stores. The enemies are growing, like my competitors, but I see them coming from the East Coast. I'm in the West, and I'm like, they're going to come to Utah. And if I have 3, I'm dead. Like that's just going to happen. I mean, we could live, but it's not going to be thriving like we are now. I have to prepare for the war that's coming. And I said, God, should I grow? Like to your question, why stop at 12? Why not go to 20? Why not go to 100? And my clear conviction was 12. I felt like I heard go to 12 by the end of the year. And I was like, 12 disciples. I started trying to justify it all. I was like, 12, that sounds like a crazy idea. I almost died at 7. I'm all scared as hell to go, I can't get to 7 again. That's going to kill me. Like this mental block. But I heard 12 by the end of the year. I had 9 months to do it.
Wow.
And so I flew home. I told my team and I said, this is crazy as shiz. We don't have a ton in cash. We have some cash, but we've been using the cash to reinvest in the stores. I think we're supposed to go to 12 by the end of the year. Half of them were Christians. So the other half said, hell yeah, hoorah, Gideon, let's go to war, right? Like they were fired up. The other half were like, we're going to die. Don't you remember the last war at 7, and we had to contract because I still had some team members, right? They were like, don't you remember, idiot? And I'm like, no, guys, the faith element, I really think I'm supposed to do this. And so punchline, I had taken on a bunch of debt, lots of machines, new equipment. We bought a bunch of devices. Most of it was inventory backed. So when I say debt, we had $800,000, $900,000 in assets against this debt. So it was only like a couple $100,000 difference in debt, right? So it was okay. It was just I had liabilities out there. So it's like, oh, this is real. This is getting really real.
We got payments against it.
We got payments against it. And I'm okay, right? As long as I can take it back. So it wasn't, the risk was mitigated. It's not as if I was just like upside down and dying. We were okay. I could pivot out of that while liquidating my furnitures, fixtures, etc. And so long story short, I knew it was a calculated debt risk, right? Like leveraging that debt. And so I looked at that and I went, okay, I can do this. We get to these 12 stores by December 28th, that year, of course, like last minute, get the store open. I do Facebook Live. And I'm like, we opened it. And along the journey, I'm telling people on social media, and it's growing, this faith element of people watching. I got 300,000 followers on Instagram, so people are watching this stupid story unfold. I say stupid, my crazy life. And they're watching, they're like, is he going to do it? Is he going to 12 stores? 12 opens, and I'm like, 12 stores open. Oh, God, let's see if it'll stay open. And, I finished the video, and I think I did it, right? There's that moment where you're like, I ran the marathon. I did the good work.
Sure.
And the stores are doing better than they ever done, like store 6, store 8, store 9, fewer acquisitions. So they already had cash flow coming in, right? So I'm like watching this stuff move really well. And long story short, we hit this 12, and overnight it's like a freaking bad horror movie. It just like comes back. Literally, I lose 6 of my team members. Cash flow starts to change. Sales aren't as high. Like just all the dynamics. And I'm like, no way, no effing way, man. Like, and I'm literally going to God. I mean, forgive me. I used to swear a lot, so I use truncated words. And so I'm like, there is no freaking way this is happening. I counted the cost. I built the house right. I counted how much money I needed before we went to war. Like I did it right.
You told me, God. You said 12.
And this is where people get bitter, right? And so I was like, God, why the hell am I here? And then I took a deep breath. I talked to my wife, and she was like, stop freaking out, man. Like she was like, do you have faith? I'm like, stop it. Stop with this thing, man. I got Bible verses on my throat. Of course I have faith. Don't you see this? And so I'm like, I'm fired up, but I'm like, she's totally right. And about 2 days later, I meet a guy, and he's like, hey, I'd like to grow to the moon. And I'm like, oh, cool. And he's like, I just sold a 400 store Verizon operation, and I've got a bunch of money. I've got a bunch of wisdom. I know how to grow and scale, and I'm an operator. You're the sales. You're the VP of sales, right? You're the sales guy. You don't quite know how to operate. You just operate with your gut and grit. You have operation skills, but you don't count before you go. You just burn it to the ground, right? And I'm like, and so he's like, I can see that. And it's so awesome because I need you, but I think you need me. Wow. And he was right. He was right. And so he comes into my life. This is it was about last year, right? So he comes in my life right at the end of the year. We get the stores. And he says, when you do this, well, perfect storm. My wife comes to me and says, hey, babe, you've been on the road for 8 weeks straight. And I know you're a warrior, and like you're at war, military mindset, traveling and selling. And we had gone into 3 states with our stores. So I was constantly on the road, expanding the IQ wall, Utah, Idaho, Arizona. I'm trying to build this intercontinental divide against the enemies encroaching, right? So I'm building, I'm fighting, we're going fast. Everybody's like, he's going to die. Well, maybe. I got God. It's okay. And so we're battling. And what happens, my wife comes to me, she's like, we're about to have our 4th kid. I love you. I've had a kid every year, pretty much. Like, we love. That's good, man. We had a kid like every year, but I need you to slow down. And I'm like, no, like I just started war. Don't you understand? I'm ahead right now. Like the Persians are coming. I am Leonidas. Get out of my way, woman. That was the flesh, right? Like I'm like, you can't tell me no. And I took a deep breath, and I was like, oh God, I'm convicted, because the Bible says live with your wife in an understanding way. And I believe those verses because my worldview is the Bible, right? And so I'm like, oh crap, I'm not doing what I believe. Like you said, the contradiction. And so I said, well, what do you expect me to do? Like, how are we doing out of 10? And I'll punchline some of this because it's a lot. I'm like, how are we? This is the pain point of my life, right? I said, how are we doing out of 10? She said, a 4.
Ooh.
I'm like, I am failing. 4 means failing. Like, what? And she said, you're never home. I love you. I don't have an emotional affair with others. I'm not pursuing others, but tell you what, I'm burnt. Wonder Woman's burnt. I need you to come home and be here. Even just a minute, just be here. So Spencer comes, that's the gentleman who came into my life. Spencer comes in, this is perfect storm. I think I'm going to go to thousands of stores. Like my mind's on war. And she says, I need you to pull back. I go to Spencer and he says, you know what? It's funny because, and he's a person of faith. He's like, I actually was feeling you should step back too for a little bit and take a deep breath and switch into a role that allows you to burn more consistently, not just rocket fuel energy all the time. Let's get you in the right seat on the bus, right? And make sure these incentives are aligned. And let's let you shine where you shine best, not in every area. Because you're the tent pole today, Casey. You're out, the whole company.
You're Superman.
I'm Superman. And Superman had some kryptonite, which happened to be all those other pieces. And it was falling apart and I didn't want to see it. Right. And so when we talk about grittiness or the struggle of a small or growing company trying to do the right thing, sometimes you have to stop. You have to slow down a bit. Right. And that's not easy for me at all. Yeah. And so with my wife, she said, you have three options. You can sell the company completely. You can pull back, or you can
I'll leave you.
Or I'll leave you. Yeah, that's it. So you have three options. I'll leave you. And I said, okay, you realize, or close it. She said, close it. And I said, closing it is stupid. I have 100 people who rely on me. You can't do that. Selling the company feels like killing it. So that sounds really crappy. And pulling away will kill it today, unfortunately, because I am the tent pole.
Yep.
So I pulled away. Step one, I'm not going to kill it. I pulled away. We lost 100 grand in sales the first 30 days. And I was like, I knew it was going to happen. I knew the systems weren't tight enough. The process, all those things I tell you that I know are the pillars. I wasn't living them.
Sure.
And I'm like, it's going to die. And so the only alternate to me was sell. So I was like, okay, I'm going to burn to the ground. I'm going to take the money. I'm going to try and get close to 5 million as possible because I know it's what I need. And I'm going to fight for that. And so we tried to go to market with it alongside Spencer. He's like, I can help you. I'll buy some of it, but I need some partnership. I'd like you to stay on as a consultant, like some golden handcuffs, right? I want you here and I want to teach you. And again, I've learned, but as you hear this business acumen come out, you're like, oh, right people, Bus, he knows some stuff. Mm-hmm. I listened to hundreds of audio systems. I've listened to hundreds of audio books by smarter guys than me over the last 7 years to learn this acumen and get trained and coached by mentors. And so here I am. We go and pitch one of his friends that's a $1.8 billion Verizon entity. They come to me and they say, tell me your vision, kid. I'm like, cool guy, nice guy, billionaire across the table. And he's like, tell me your vision. I'm like, well, can I just be real? He's like, that's all I want you to be. And so I tell him my story. Grew, blah, 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 blah. And now I'm here. My wife wants me to, kill it. Sorry, I'm a warrior and I want to go to war every day. And I don't know what my identity will look like on the other side of this if I kill this thing or sell it. But I trust God, so we're here, man. And he laughs and he says, well, what if you could get the best of both worlds? And so for me, this is this faith element where I didn't believe. I'm like, I got to 12. It almost dies. My marriage is going to die. I did what you told me to do, God. And now I feel like the building's on top of me, like Superman, right? And so long and short, this guy says to me, what if I acquire you, the entire company? You'll get your cash off the table. You take care of your liabilities. You'll end up with some money, which I bought this house in cash for, praise God, right? And all the things here and my Maserati and all those things. So yes, I took the deal, right? And the jacket. But if you got money off the table, but then you stayed on and I gave you 10% just because you agreed to stay, no money, no risk. Well, most deals don't end like that, right? They're like, you don't get all your money off the table and get equity and a salary, right? Usually. And so this guy gives me a 6-figure salary to stay, doctor salaries for
plus ownership,
plus 10% equity, and then
plus the cash out.
Plus the cash out.
That's
and
a sweet deal.
Cash out was full value, no holdbacks.
That's a sweet deal, man.
It was literally the perfect deal. It was just like, whoa, this is where faith in God for me meets. My faith in business meets because I was petrified to 12. I did what I felt like God called me to do. Once I'm here, I think it's all going to die, and it was close. And I get ransomed. Just like I see God for my own life ransoming me multiple times from these things. And so that's why pinnacle for me, faith in business, is so critical because I live it. I see it real time in my world. And so I ended up taking a couple $1 million off the table. I didn't hit the 5 yet. Still grinding. Here we go. Paid off all my debts and liabilities, secured my assets for my family. And now I'm on the other side of this. And the objective goals become, can I teach others who are in this growth where I was, right? I can't teach them where you're at. I can't. I have to defer to gentlemen who've done what you've done because I don't have the moral authority. And so long and short, that's where I've been at today with Rocketprenuer. The goal is to help teach people what I learned, good and bad.
So it's funny because when I torched the company back in 2015, I knew it wasn't sustainable. We hit $100 million. We were there for a couple of years in a row, and I knew it wasn't sustainable, and I blew it up. I literally made a decision at one day, just like that, and said, I'm gonna torch it.
Wow.
And it was the best decision I ever made because I think this year we'll do $180 million, right? So it was an unbelievable, powerful decision. Very, very difficult over that process. My point being, and I never said this to anybody, but I didn't do it alone. I had a friend of mine who had this small little boot camp that he ran called Business Finishing School. In which he taught the principles of core values and mission statement above anything else. There's 48 different steps, but number 1 and number 2 are core values and mission statement. And he was begging me for a long time, hey, you got to come to my boot camp. I'm like, come on, man, I don't need to go to your boot camp.
I got time.
I mean, he's a high flyer. He's a heavy hitter, but I was like, come on, man. I'm sooner or later, you got to be the teacher, not always the student, right?
Yeah.
And I went and I said, like a lightning bolt, I said, this is exactly what I need to have the guts to do this. And do you know that last night, and he and I become very, very good friends. And last night I bought half of the company last night.
No way.
I bought half of Business Finishing School. I own 50% of it because I'm going to teach people the same principles that he teaches, to have the confidence to torch it, to burn it, to get back to mission statement and core values, and don't sweat the other stuff. If you get those two things right and you're in the right platform, and I suppose in your situation, I'm not using faith as part of the education process, but you are, the rest will take care of itself, man.
It will. It will. Because economically, the Bible says all hard work produces profit. I believe that. So and that's the reconciliation, saying, if we do what's right, we will have fruit. If we do what's wrong, we will have consequence. That's the fact.
Well, dude,
we've been long enough.
This has been a wild ride, man. I mean, we really could have just talked about the business strategy and just been done with it. But I mean, we went all over the place. I'm grateful for you, Casey. It's such a pleasure to meet you. Whereabouts in Utah are you?
So I live just outside of Salt Lake City. So Salt Lake, I'm in West Valley area. I like to live among the people. People be like, that's ghetto. I'm like, that's me. I love the West.
I get there a lot. So I do a lot of business with a bank called Transportation Alliance Bank, TAB Bank.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
And they're in Ogden, Utah. And then I also, once a year, I go to Eden. And I do a thing called family board meetings where I bring one of my kids to this event, and we go up there to Eden and we spend 3-4 days up there. So if it's okay with you, I got to look you up when I'm up there, and we got to hang.
Please do. I'd love it. I'll play you some songs. You can show me your skills in singing. we'll pull some oldies out and we'll jam them, man.
But look, man, people got to follow more about it. So it's Rocketprenuer. So it's rocket like rocket, and then preneur like entrepreneur.
Yep. And I spell it wrong. So that's why the preneur is spelled like it sounds, not like it's actually spelled.
Oh, gotcha. I just saw that.
Yeah. Prenuer. Preneur. This just made sense. I have both domains, but it's meant to be wild. It's just me.
Okay, got it, man.
I couldn't spell it. Let's just be honest.
Dude, it's been a wild ride. I can't wait to see the next evolution of Casey. You're going to just freaking kill it. I see the crystal clarity. You've got a few bucks put aside now, so you have the stability and the foundation to just freaking be everything you were supposed to be. And not that you weren't doing that, dude. You're on the right path. You're on the path, the Casey path.
The crazy Casey, man. That's what they call him. Crazy Casey. That guy, wow. Matt, you're a blessing, man. Thank you for having me on your show.
Dude, thank you for being on there. I can't wait to see you in person. Okay, buddy? Take care of yourself.
You too, sir.
Peace.